Okay, are you ready? Let's do this. Okay, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So this will be the first language in our web programming that we'll have to get a fairly decent grasp on. Actually, HTML is not considered a programming language anyway, since it is a markup language. What it's used to do is to define the structure of a document, more specifically, how content is displayed to a user. Although it's not a programming language, it's absolutely essential to have a decent grasp on how it works if you ever want to do web programming. Why? Because HTML is the way we see the web. When you create your web applications, at some time or another, you will need to display something to the user. That's where HTML comes in. Now, in every HTML page is a basic structure of tags and elements that hold information that will be used by the browser to display information to the user or to provide relevant identifying information. Got that? Cool. Alright, here is the basic structure that I was speaking about. Alright, you see this first line of code? That's not optional. I'll get back to that soon. But first we add the HTML tag, then we add the closing HTML tag. The first one is the opening tag, the last one is the closing tag, obviously. You have the head tag, you have the closing head tag, then we're going to add the body tag, the closing body tag, and then we're going to go back into this head element and we're going to add a title element inside of it with the opening tag and the closing title tag to that. Okay, now all we have to do is save our document as an index.html file in the folder that you just created. That's all we really have to do to turn a basic text document into HTML. Just make sure that instead of having .text at the end of your file, you have .html instead. By naming our file index, it tells the server to show this page first over all others when this directory that we have it in is accessed in a web browser. Now, if you aren't familiar with web directories work pretty much the same as the folders work on your computer. In fact, they work exactly the same. They're just accessible from the web. I'll show you how that works in a moment. Okay, go to your web folder and double click on the index.html file. It should automatically open in your default browser. Mine happens to be Firefox. There's not much to see right now, but this is a fully functioning web page already. We just have to put something in it. We'll take care of that soon. Since we're in the browser, let's look at the address bar. Notice how it starts with file:// That's like the HTTP:// in a web browser, followed by the domain name. So it looks like this. www.example.com. Okay, anytime you see a slash, it's identifying a folder on the website. That's all there really is to it. If this was our website, desktop would be the name of our website and web would be a folder on our website. If this was on our server already, we wouldn't actually need to include the index.html. It would show automatically. That's what I was explaining just a moment ago when I said naming it index tells the server to show the page first. Okay, let's get back to our code. According to the W3C, or the World Wide Web Consortium, this first line of code is not optional. The primary reason is that with this line of code, you're telling the browser what type of HTML standards to follow on this page. For our purposes, we're using a transitional document type because it provides the most flexibility for someone just learning and it prevents common errors and inefficiencies in older browsers. Don't sweat that line too much, just consider it as necessary and be sure to include it. You can learn more about this by visiting w3.org. It's a great resource if you're a beginner or an advanced web programmer, so you might want to check it out anyway. Alright, let's go ahead and move on. After a quick glance at the code, you'll notice something called elements that have what is called an opening tag and a closing tag. For example, the HTML element begins with the opening tag HTML and then ends with the closing tag /HTML. Everything in between the opening tag and the closing tag is a part of the HTML element. Notice the slash in the closing tag. That's how we tell the browser that this is the end of an element. In this case, the HTML element. Now let's look back at that basic structure once more. How many elements do you see, excluding the first line of code? I'll give you a moment. Okay, so how many did you count? Did you count 5? Did you count 3? Did you count 2? Alright, if you answered anything other than 4, then you might want to look at that one more time. In fact, you might notice something that may seem a little strange at first. Some of the elements are inside other elements. In fact, all of the elements are inside other elements, with the exception of the HTML element. Well, that brings about an important point. Most HTML elements can go inside other HTML elements. This is called nesting. So a nested element will work within the context of the element it's nested inside. That'll make more sense later, just get the concept for now. Now let's look back at that basic structure again. See the head element? It has a title element inside of it. This is because the head element provides basic information to the browser about the page that is being shown to the user. In this case, the head element is telling the browser what the title of this page should be. Since we don't have anything in our title element, there's currently nothing to display. So let's give this page a title so you can see how it works. Okay, be sure to save your changes and open it in the browser. Alright, you see that? Right at the top of the page? Now we have ourselves a title on our page. Great. So now that we have a title on our page, how about we actually display something on our page to our visitor? Well, we're going to do that, but we'll do that in part 2 of this introduction to web programming. But for now, let me recap what we've covered so far. Okay, we've defined what programming is. Then we described briefly how the internet works from a web programming perspective. Then we defined what web programming means by connecting the meaning of programming to the environment of the internet. We've explained the basic structure of pretty much every page on the internet. We've introduced elements and we've explained the parameters of an element. We've established the idea of nesting and we've explained how that works in HTML. And finally, we added a title to our page and displayed it in the browser. We've covered quite a bit already, but right now we only have a title showing on our page. Well, that'll change in part 2. For now, just make sure you're understanding these foundational concepts, because these actually will be critical in later lessons. Make sure you review them and make sure you understand them. I'll see you in part 2.